we are excited to announce our Neon Wizard to LED Wizard upgrade program. This provides a direct upgrade path from any version or level of Neon Wizard to our current LED Wizard version 7.1. This video will provide a detailed summary of the LED Wizard workflow, while pointing out areas where Neon Wizard and LED Wizard are similar, and where LED Wizard provides new or different capabilities. If you are currently using Neon Wizard, or have used Neon Wizard in the past, and are now making letters and cabinets with LEDs, then upgrading to LED Wizard as part of this new program will save you time and money. It's that simple. So let's take a look at LED Wizard 7.1. The first step of the workflow is bringing in your artwork. Now, the traditional way is to import the design file. And here in the import dialog box, we support the major vector file formats, the most common being EPS, AI, PDF, and DXF. Now, when you click on a file, it brings up this preview window. And now we have a way to crop right here in the import dialog box. So for example, in this design, I don't want to bring in the picture or some of the other details. I just want to bring in the letters and the scale. So I can simply draw a crop box right like this, and this is all that I'll import. So now down here, here's my lettering that I imported, and I can see that the scale is 1 foot 6 3/8 inches. This file is only about ½ inch, so I have to scale this up. So the cleanest way to do this is just to do group by color. And so I do arrange group by color. I had already selected that first D. So now I can move that off, and I have that all as one group. And now I can just change the height, 18.375. My length automatically scales, and so now I have this at full scale. So that's the most common way to bring in artwork. Now I can just delete what I had remaining here. Now another option to bring in artwork, which is actually even easier, is simply to use copy and paste from the Windows clipboard, from either Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW. So here I have the same file in Illustrator, and all I have to do is just make a selection of this lettering in the Edit menu and say Copy, and now come back into LED Wizard and say Paste. And that just brings my design right in here. Again, this is scaled to the scaled down size. So basically at this point I use the same tool that I did last time, which is group by color, and then I can select this and scale this up. So for this set of lettering, I'll actually scale this to 60 inches. And so here, going from 0.86 inches to 60 inches on the height. And so this will be another population that we'll do later on. So copy and paste from Illustrator or CorelDRAW is a very simple way to bring in artwork. Now a third option is to import a full-scale drawing, and in this case I have an EPS file, and this is actually a basic neon layout that I worked up of the same lettering, and I can import here, and again now this imports also at 60 inches. And so in this case I have the neon tube, I have some PK housings, double backs, and really I just want to select the lettering. And so we have a function to do that called the extraction tool. And the extraction tool basically lets you select the objects that you want to keep in a layout. So it's a way to get rid of unwanted data. So when I select the outside lettering, I click on it, it adds the object up here, and each time I click I can then select and add the next letter. So basically I could just go along and select each letter like this, and it will ignore the neon tubes and the rest of the data. And so if you have a design file that has a lot of extra data like this, a neon retrofit job, or if import crop does not take out all of the data that you want to take out, then this is actually another way to just select the data, the data that you want to keep. So let me just finish up the rest of these letters, and then we'll actually have 3 different sizes of this job. Okay, so now I've selected all the letters, and I can actually put a new height or width. And I think for this one, we'll actually make this one 120 inches. So this will be 10-foot high letters. And then I click on Extract. And what it does is it actually puts the new size right up here. So I can scale the layout up. And then again, I can go back here, select the original, and delete it. So now in this layout, I have the actual size, 18 3/8 inches, a 60-inch version, and a 120-inch version. And so this is the file that will continue working in this demo. There are 3 new features here that are improvements over Neon Wizard: import crop, copy and paste with Illustrator and Corel, and the extraction tool. These are all intended to help get your design into the program faster and get them ready for LED population. The next step in the workflow is to clean up the vector data if necessary. And so we'll go ahead and take a look at these letters. First thing I'll do is turn off the colors, and so we can see the loop directions. Then click on the Vector Edit tool and select each letter. We can see that this is Bezier curve data, and we can edit the Bezier curve if necessary, but it looks like that this data is very clean. The Bezier curves have been maintained when we imported at each of the 3 different sizes. So in this case, we don't really have to do any editing, but the vector editing tools in LED Wizard are similar to those that we have in Neon Wizard, with 2 exceptions. We have 2 new editing tools here in the LED menu. We have Recreate with Bezier curves, and we have the Rasterize Vectorize filter. So Recreate with Bezier curves actually converts the data into Bezier curves, which usually reduces the number of vectors and also smooths out the data. Rasterize Vectorize filter will take the object, convert it to a raster image, and then revectorize it. And in some cases that ends up cleaning up the data from the original. So 2 new options there. But in this case, no vector editing needs to be done. The data looks very clean, and so we can go ahead and move on to the next step. And so very quickly, data cleanup tools if necessary, all the Neon Wizard vector editing tools, plus Recreate with Bezier curves, and the Rasterize Vectorize filter. The next step in the workflow is to populate the letters with LEDs using our Autopopulation tools. And here's where the difference between Neon Wizard and LED Wizard starts to become more evident. Obviously, neon tubes are a continuous path, and LED modules are separate objects. So we developed a new technology called PowerFlow, and this is the technology that helps us to lay out the modules as well as edit the positions of the modules. So when I click on the PowerFlow button, I then get a preview path inside of my letter. And you'll see up here that the toolbar has changed, and we have first a drop-down list of over 60 LED suppliers that are supported in the software. And we'll use the XYZ brand, our sample brand, for the demo. And we'll select a standard cool white double module. We also have an input for can depth, and I'm just going to bring this down to 3 inches. And you'll see here that the what we call the preview path has now adjusted to show 2 rows of LEDs, which at the 60-inch size is consistent with what we did with Neon. You'll notice also that we have a stroke width, and this is measured as the stroke distance here inside of each letter. And so we have a clearance of 1.5, and we have 2 runs. So these are the values that come up. So once we put the can depth, it measures the stroke width. You select a module, and it suggests the clearance and the number of runs. So over here we have 3 main population options. We have pop sim, which stands for populate symmetrical, pop serifs, and pop round. And so if I want to populate all these letters together using the same settings, I can use pop all sim, populate all symmetrical. And when I click on that, it starts to place the LEDs along the guide path inside of each letter. And so this is what we call the auto-population routine. Okay, so that is for the 60-inch version, and you can see that it gives a very even, clean population. The next step we'll talk about how to edit these modules, but for now I just want to show the population options. Now when I click up here on the larger 120-inch letters, you can see now the same shallow can depth of 3 inches. It's now suggesting 3 runs, using 1.5 as a clearance and 3 inches for the run gap. So now we'll go over here to pop all sim again. So now we'll start populating these 10-foot letters with 3 rows of LEDs. Again, you can see that it's giving a very even population. And we have a couple areas where we'd want to go in and do some module editing. And again, we'll cover that in the next step. But you can see here that it's doing a good job of populating here in the larger letters. And in fact, the software is, I think, more efficient at larger letters. It saves you the most time and the most effort over any other method to create LED layouts. And I wanted to mention here above each letter that it shows the modules per square foot as well as the linear modules per foot as a measure of density, and you can see that it's pretty consistent across these letters. So there's the triple run on the 10-foot letters. So now we'll take a look at the smaller letters, the 18 and 3/8 inch letters, and we'll actually switch to a smaller module to look at these. We'll do the small white double module, and that's giving us a single run inside of these letters. And so we'll go ahead and again do pop all sim, and so it puts a single run of LEDs inside each letter. And so we have a case where from the same design we're populating 18-inch letters and we're populating 120-inch letters. And so this shows the versatility of the software and the range that the software has in terms of being able to populate at different sizes. So the next step here is I'd like to make a small sign cabinet and actually show how we can populate a cabinet, because we have a separate set of features for populating using parallel options, which is similar to a feature that we had in Neon Wizard. So I'll just enter a rounded rectangle. I'll make this about the size of the 60-inch lettering, and I'll just make this round like that and say done. And let's just bring this up to 60 inches. Okay, so here's my rounded rectangle, and when I want to go to Power Flow, and instead of doing a layout that looks like this, which is concentric inlines, we would prefer to do a parallel layout like this. And of course this is familiar from Neon Wizard. And I'll switch back to the standard cool white double. So in this mode, as we adjust the clearance value, then it adjusts the layout. And I could also bring the run gap up. We have what's called the actual run gap, which is a slight adjustment to make sure that we have all the runs that are even. So when I click on Pop Sim, and we get this style of layout. Now I can easily clear, and I can switch it to vertical, populate this way, as well as I could do an angled layout that would look like this. We also have a hybrid option, and hybrid is essentially a single inline and then parallel runs in between. And a hybrid layout would look something like that. So quite a few options in terms of laying out for cabinets. It's very easy to lay out straight runs, and of course the hybrid option makes sure that you have even light around the outside. So very easy for larger shapes, larger cabinets. You can even use these on very large letters. So that's the end of this section on the auto-population tools, and the next section will turn to editing of these modules. In summary of the auto LED population section, we talked about selecting LED brands and modules. We showed how the density guidelines help determine the correct number of runs. We showed the preview guide path, so you know exactly how the LEDs are being distributed in the letter. We talked about symmetrical, serif, and round population options, as well as the parallel and hybrid populations for cabinets and large letters. The next step here in the workflow is to use the PowerFlow editing tools to adjust the position of the modules. And these tools fall into two categories, basically editing individual modules and editing selections of modules. So we'll start here with the smaller population. We'll look at this Y, and the first thing that we can do is simply click and drag a module, and you can see that it's sliding along this guide path. So I can just click and drag any of these modules. You'll notice that if I move the module too far away from another one, that the wire turns red, and that means that that module won't reach. I can move also off of the guide path by holding the Control key, as well as rotate a module with the either endpoint will rotate. So if I want to move a module like this, I can rotate, hold Control, and bring the module up here like that. When I have a red wire, I can insert a module when it turns green just by clicking, and that inserts a module into that position. So these are all things I can do on an individual module. I can also delete a module just by selecting it and pressing delete. And you'll notice too that there's always a preview module, so in addition to when there's a red wire, if I simply move the mouse here in preview and click, then it'll add a module at that position. So it's very direct, it's very easy to edit the position of each module. Now I can also break a run here with the shortcut key O, and that's like Neon Wizard. And perhaps I'd want to then connect these two together, so I can do Shift click will connect, and now I have these two runs connected. And maybe I want to delete one run out of here to keep this consistent, so I bring this back down, and I might just adjust that, Shift click to reconnect. So that would be a pretty consistent population across the two sections of the Y. So this is sort of a summary of individual module editing. And so let's switch over here to the G, and we can look at what it means to make a selection of modules. Because it's pretty obvious that if I want to insert a module here into this G, say that I insert a module here, it would take a long time, module by module, to go around and to respace that to be perfectly distributed. So with PowerFlow, we have the ability to make a selection of modules, and so I can make a selection by starting here with the endpoint, and then clicking up here on the other endpoint and holding Shift. So when I Shift click, it makes a selection of all those modules. And over here in the PowerFlow tab, it shows us that we have an area of this letter of 0.6 square feet, We have a density of 26.8 modules per square foot. This particular letter has 17 modules at 4.14 modules a foot, and our selection now has 12 modules at 4.03 modules a foot. So we always have this data available for each letter. Now once I have this selection, there are all kinds of things that I can do. The first thing that I would do up here using these icons is what we call uniform respace. So it takes the end position and keeps them in the same place, but then distributes all the other modules evenly between it. I can also increase the density. Each time I click on this icon, it adds one more module. Or I can decrease density. Each time I click, it takes one module out. Now if I go too far on decrease, then it turns these into red wires. That of course means that it won't reach, so I would have to add at least one module back. Okay, so now I have this evenly spaced distribution of modules. I have additional options including rotation. So each time I click this icon or this icon, it will rotate the selection. Now you'll notice that the wire gets a little bit tight, and each time that the wire gets too tight, it automatically adds one more module. So the next time I click, there it just added one module. So I can continue to rotate modules like this, and at some point you realize that it would be more efficient to alternate the wires. And so we have a feature that alternates wires and lays these out in a perpendicular fashion to the stroke. And that is this one, perpendicular alternate rotated. And so when I click on that, it gives me this kind of a layout. So we often call this a 1.5 runs. It has a density of somewhere between 1 and 2 runs. And once I have a selection like this, I can also increase the density or decrease the density. So very flexible as far as getting the exact density that you want inside of the letter. This kind of rotation is terrific in that it distributes the light and allows you to increase the density less than having to add an entire another run. So these are some of the PowerFlow editing tools. We have many other tools and many other options as well, including adjusting spacing in and out from the return, converting runs to a line, and lots of other things. So this is a quick introduction to PowerFlow, but you can see that you have very nice direct control over each module, over making selections of modules, and it's very fast and very efficient for module editing. Now a quick summary on PowerFlow editing tools. We talked about making edits on individual modules, such as adjusting the position on and off the guide path, rotation of modules, inserting modules, connecting runs, breaking runs. And then we talked about making selections of modules, and some of the edits we can make on a selection of modules, including increasing, decreasing density, evenly spacing the modules, and various rotation options. We also showed module density and the various readings we have to ensure that you have consistent module density across your letters. The next section we'll talk about adding power supplies. The next step in the workflow is to add and load power supplies. Of course, in Neon Wizard there is not a function for adding transformers, but in LED Wizard we have a rich set of tools for adding and loading power supplies, as well as showing a wiring diagram. And there are actually 3 ways to add power supplies. We have automated tools here in the power supply menu. We can add individual power supplies from our list here. And we also have what's called the power supply mode, which is another way to add power supplies for large letters. So we'll go ahead and start here on the smaller lettering, and we'll select the XYZ 25 watt power supply. Note we also have a set of generic Meanwell power supplies. And for this small lettering, I'll go ahead and select from the power supply menu, add optimal power supplies by letter. And so what this does is adds power supplies across all the letters, and it will add as many as it can and then add another power supply. So in this case here we've added 5 power supplies of 25 watts to cover all of these letters. And you'll note that in each power supply we have the load percentage, the number of modules, and the watts used out of the total number of watts. You'll also notice here that the wires have gotten a lot thicker, and of course we have the wire drawings coming down. You can position the power supplies anywhere you want. Usually they go below, you can put them above, you can put them all in a straight line off to the side. It's very flexible with how you position power supplies. So that's one automatic option. If I choose the 60-inch letters, I know that I can do, let's say, a 120 watt power supply. And if these are self-contained letters, then I can do 1 power supply per letter at 120 watts. So we'll do add 1 power supply per letter. And so it adds all the power supplies and places them below. And so now I know that I can load 1 power supply per letter. Now in this case, the L only has 40 watts out of 120, so you might not want 120 watt power supplies in that case. So let me go ahead and undo the adding of power supplies. And so now I'll show how to add an individual power supply. So if I select the L here, let's say that I go back to now to a 60 watt power supply. I can click on plus, bring that into the layout, click in here in the L, and do Alt-click on the power supply. And now that's added just that letter to that power supply. So this is the second option of adding basically letter by letter. We also have the option of doing run by run. So if you want to do mix different power supplies across your letters, then you would do it this way. Whereas the automated tool is the same power supply across all letters. Now over here on the cabinet, I want to show the third option of power supplies, which is called the power supply mode. And when I'm in the power supply mode, if I bring in this 60 watt power supply, I can simply make a selection of modules like this, and it gives me a preview and says how many will load onto that power supply. If I try to put too many, the lettering turns red. So I can click right there, make that selection. In the power supply menu, go to the option Add Selection Rectangle Modules to Power Supply, shortcut key B. And so now that will add this selection to this power supply. And so I could continue making these kinds of selections and add all the modules in this cabinet. So this allows me to make a rectangular selection. If I hold Control, I can make a selection something like this. So it's very flexible as far as how I want to distribute the modules on the power supply. So that's 3 ways to add power supplies into the layout. It's actually quite efficient to add power supplies. And in the next step, we'll talk about adding statistics. In summary of adding and loading power supplies, we have automatic tools for adding 1 power supply per letter, 1 power supply for all letters, and optimal power supplies. We also have an option to load power supplies 1 letter at a time or by 1 run at a time. And then we also have the power supply mode, which is used to add multiple power supplies to 1 cabinet or 1 letter. The next step in the workflow is to add stats per letter and for the whole job. So after the last section, I went ahead and put in the rest of the power supplies for the sign cabinet and mixed in the 60 and 120 watt power supplies for each letter. And so before we move on to generating the stats, we have to use the function called assign letters. And this is also in Neon Wizard. So when we import a design, the software doesn't know what the letters are. So we have to go here to LED menu, assign letters, and then I'll just type in Desert Valley Radiology, and then I'll do the same thing. The larger set, I went ahead and deleted the largest set from this section just because it would end up being so much information, but I kept the 60-inch, and so I'll do the same thing here, assign letters, Desert Valley Radiology. Okay, so now it's just a question of clicking here on the stats button. You can see that it brings in two sets of stats, one down here for the smaller letters, and then one up here for on the top, since there's no room on the bottom, for the larger letters. So what you can see in each stat object is quite a bit of information, and this has been augmented from Neon Wizard and from previous versions of LED Wizard. So now for each letter, we're showing the number of modules, the number of watts, the square footage of the face of the letter, the modules per square feet, as well as a perimeter measurement around the outside of the letter. So basically in this one set of stats, we're providing information for the modules, the power supplies, your face material, your letter back material, your trim cap, and your return coil. So all of that information, you can make an estimate for all those materials just from the information we're providing here. Down here at the very bottom is a summary of the entire job. So we have 1,759 total modules, divided according to these two modules. 1,320 watt power supplies, 5 25s and 14 60 watts, 146 square feet, 610 perimeter feet. So all of that information was generated in one quick click of the mouse on stats. Of course, we can also scale the stats. So I can scale them up and down. I can also adjust them this way to reposition them according to the proper spot on the letters. And then separately I can do these stats down here. So this is quite flexible in terms of trouble grabbing the stats down here. There we go. So it is very flexible as far as this information can be customized for each letter. The overall stats for the whole job can also be customized. This, of course, will display information either in inches and feet or in millimeters and meters, depending on which unit of measure you're using. So very powerful stats, very fast to generate the stats. And now in the next section, we'll move on to the title block merge. But before we do that, let's take a look at the summary of the stats section. So we can create the stats in either metric or imperial measurements. We can customize the data and customize the labels of all the stat objects. We can scale, respace, and reposition all of the stats objects. And we're generating stats per letter and per job. The next step in the workflow is to merge our design with our title block template. So I went in here and made a few spacing adjustments, just moved this down, moved the summary stats over, scaled them up. So we can now take our custom title block template and merge it into this layout. The title block template can have bitmaps in it, it can have vector graphics, it can have your logo, pretty much anything you want to have in the template. When you're ready to do the merge, you simply click here on merge, and then your title block template will actually be scaled up to fit the design. So let me turn my colors on. And so this is a very long and skinny design, so there's a little bit of extra space. But basically, the title block template is typically designed around a page size, so that when you print, this will fill a page. So this template is an 8.5 by 11 US letter page format as a landscape. Down here I have our LED Wizard logo, our Aries graphics logo. We have a simple legal statement. We have a space here where you could perhaps add the summary information. So you can move and position the stats. Some people have information at the top or along one of the sides, but basically the design is placed inside of the template. And so in LED Wizard we always work at full scale. So this is still a full scale drawing. I can still do any edits that I need to. I'm just working now in the context of my title block template. In summary of the section on merging with a title block template, we have a very flexible design for the template file. You can add bitmaps and vector graphics and design it any way you want. It's very easy to merge your design with your title block just by clicking on the merge button. And you can further customize the position of things like stats or other graphics within your title block template. The final step of the workflow is to export the finished design. And this export can either be to a scaled PDF file. This would be an estimate that you would send to your customer as a sales tool, or it could be a full-scale production file that you would use to produce the job. So first we'll show the export to a scaled PDF, which is this button here. And when it comes into the export dialog box, you can see that we have a preview. And so the preview is a dynamic preview, so as I select or deselect layers here in the layers to export box, this will update, so you know exactly what you're exporting. And this is similar to what we do in Neon Wizard. So here in the list of file formats, I have different options for PDF, US letter sizes A4, A3, and tabloid. So I could export that as a scaled down PDF. The other option for exporting is to export a full-scale drawing. And there's one more critical feature that I want to show you related to this, and that's called the router layer. So creating the router layer basically creates a new layer of data comprised of these short lines in the exact position of each module. And this is important because it ties the production of the job to the estimate of the job. So this particular layer can be sent to your router, and you can either mark the letter backs with the router, or you can attach a pen to the router and just mark the letter backs that way. So very critical to, again, tying the production of the job to the estimate of the job. So when I go to export this file in full scale, I would then just select the router layer, and I could actually get rid of all the other layers except for the letter outlines. And that would be a file that I could send to my router. In summary of exporting, we can export a scaled PDF for our customer presentation, and or we can export a full-scale drawing for production. We have the optional router layer, and we can also select specific layers to export in the export dialog box. This concludes the demo of LED Wizard. Here's a summary of the workflow steps that we've gone through in the last 40 minutes. For more information about LED Wizard and the Neon Wizard upgrade program, please contact Aries Graphics or your local science supply distributor, and thank you very much for watching.